So we left off with our crab creature here. And the cool thing is it's mostly been tools we know, right? Extrude and loop cut. We did the initial setup with our auto mirror right here and our subdivision surface modifiers, right? The blue wrench. And then we've just been shaping and tweaking shape, right? Remember, a big part of getting any appendage out is extrusion, but it's also moving these things down, right? Man, it's disconnecting. All right. I have to restart this. Are you kidding me? All right, let me try to reconnect that TV. Alrighty. Come on, don't take forever. Verifying, connecting. Okay, there we go. So there will be a brief interlude for like 30 seconds in the recording because of the disconnection, but it happens. All right, so we've done some cool shaping. Now remember, we could do more shaping here, right? One of the biggest things, and you could come back to adjust this later on, right? So let's say I go to 3 for face mode, right? So part of today is I did want to talk more about shaping because that's useful, right? That's once you know your extrusions and your loop cuts, it's about shaping. Now, of course, if you can get yourself a 3-button mouse, either borrowing one of the ones that are here, or just having one on your own, right? That's always great. Remember, you can select the face on the bottom. And remember, there's up arrow, right? Up arrow selects more or less, right? So up arrow and down arrow select more and less. Remember, they are on the select menu, right? Select more or less, up and down arrow. And you'll notice that I can hit W for move, right? W for move. And if I want to, I could middle mouse button to move this up, right? So if I want my leg way up here, I mean, I don't because I kind of wanted it roughly lined up at the bottom of that one. You could still do that, right? I can hit E for rotate. And if I want this to kind of be twisted more out here, I could either grab the handle, right, blue, and you'll see the blue handle will really be highlighted when you're rotating it. But of course, middle mouse button is view rotate. W for move. I could, of course, grab the red. And you'll notice, like, the red line, right? So it'll let you kind of know it's moving just along the red axis, that red line. But you'll notice that you could rotate these things or even hit R for scale, right? That center one, but middle mouse button also does it, to shrink or make larger. So remember, you could do this as you're modeling your leg, right? You extrude to start to actually give yourself geometry for the appendage, several extrusions. But also you need to move, rotate, and scale to create the shape. And you could do it after the fact. If you're seeing your leg maybe not quite as thick, or it's maybe it needs to be a little bigger, or you want it to be a little longer or stretched out, maybe you want to pull it back more, you could do that, right? That is something you can easily do just by selecting. And more or less is a pretty easy way to do it. Remember, there's shortest path and linked. There's select loop inner region. There's some great ones that I use all the time, but we've talked more about more and less, and that's a good one to know, so we can keep working with that one. Now, of course, I did put some loop cuts in this to do more shaping. So remember, Alt-C is your quick key for loop cut. It is right here, though, right? Loop cut. So I can just left-click there to kind of put an edge loop in there. R for scale. Remember, your middle mouse button will do your uniform scale, although you'll notice that this big circle and the inner circle, they kind of highlight white a little bit. You can left-click on those to do the uniform scale also. Middle mouse button is just your shortcut to use that. And then, of course, I can go to loop cut, and I can put another loop cut in there. R for scale. Remember, R is your scale tool. That is used for size changes, right? That changes the size. You can make an area bigger or smaller. Obviously, you could do it on just one axis, but also, and what's honestly probably more useful more of the time, right? Not all the time, but more of the time, is that outer one, right? The kind of white circles. Middle mouse button does it for you automatically. That's your uniform scale. It scales all three at the same time. Remember, you could double left click, right? Double left click to select an edge loop. W for middle mouse button. Bring that up. Now maybe it's a little bit slanted there, right? See how it's kind of, I want that to be more evenly spaced. E for rotate. Remember, Alt left mouse button moves your camera, rotates your camera. Alt middle mouse button moves your camera. Alt right mouse button zooms. But if I get that angled the way I like it, remember the outer white circle on the rotate tool is your view rotate. So you see how you can come in here and double left click, select an edge loop, and rotate these to bend them. W to move them, right? I could do Alt C for loop cut again and maybe put an edge loop in here. R for scale. Middle mouse button. You see how I can kind of make that a little bit kind of poofed out there? And then, of course, maybe a double left click. Middle mouse button there to scale that in a little bit. W for move. But you see how you want to change your view, right? You want to be rotating and zooming out of your view to give you different angles to allow you to shape better. But you can also notice that we basically have the ability to add loops after the fact later on, right? So I can go do a loop cut here. W for move, middle mouse button. Double left click. E for rotate, middle mouse button, because that does that view rotate. That is based on your view, though, so you want to get a good view for that rotation, right? And that's where you could just kind of do a little more shaping to that, right? But that's just loop cuts, right? And moving, rotating, scaling. Double left click to select an edge loop. Stuff we've talked about a lot already, and we're going to keep talking about a lot, fully in the videos. So you see how now that leg just has a bit more detail going on, a little bit more kind of curvature and bend to it. So just keep that in mind, right? That these are how you're going to shape. But you do need a couple of extrusions to get that leg started, and you're going to need to move it, rotate it, and scale it to kind of bend it to get the shape you want. And then as you go, you can add in some loop cuts to define more of the detail even better. And of course, there's lots of kind of rotating your camera around, moving your camera around. And remember, that's Alt and your mouse buttons. Alt left, Alt middle, Alt right mouse button for zoom, right? That's all if you're using industry compatible, right? Edit preferences, key map, industry compatible, right? Instead of Blender, industry compatible. Remember, that's already in videos also, so you're getting plenty of video exposure to a lot of this stuff. All right, Control S for save. There we go. So I just wanted to get you guys to see a little bit more shaping, a little more loop cut, a little more like select edge loops or faces, right? 3 for face mode. I could select the face, move it down or up. Or if I wanted to give a little knob there, I could Control E for extrude middle mouse button to kind of bring a little bit of that out. W for move to move it over. Maybe even do one of those here, right? So remember, 3 for face mode. Control E for extrusion, middle mouse button. You can, of course, grab the green handle as well, or not the green, but the yellow, right, that yellow plus. But middle mouse button is using your view move when you extrude. So it's kind of like a drag extrude. And when you're doing a character creature, I find that's a bit quicker and easier. So you, of course, don't have to do that, but you can to kind of give your little extra crab details there, right? So loop cutting and extruding can be used anytime you really need them. But you also just need to move, rotate, scale to get shape. And that takes a bit more practice, right? I can keep showing that to you. I can keep pointing out how to use those to do it. But you just got to do it. You got to play. When we have lab time, you just got to say, hey, can you help me with that a little bit? And we could point some stuff out. All right. So now what I want to show you is a little bit of for your knowledge, right? You might not need this yet. So this is the kind of part where maybe you don't do it, but you'll have a video and you'll have a lecture to kind of reference a little bit. If, for whatever reason, you needed to get rid of a couple polygons, right? Say 3 for face mode, and I select a couple polygons. Remember, Shift adds, and you hit delete, right? Delete brings up your delete menu. So delete on the keyboard. And you see there's delete faces and dissolve edges. Now, I've set quickies up for those because I use those a lot. Shift delete and Control delete. I want to delete faces here. Now that leaves you with a big hole. Now most of you guys haven't needed that yet or haven't used it, and that's fine. But if you do, right, there's a couple of ways you could fill this in. One is you could just go to 2 for edge mode. Double left click, right? Because remember, double left click. That's double click with your left mouse button. That selects edge loops, whether they're border edge loops or regular edge loops. Double left click. That selects that edge loop for that hole. You've made a hole there. If I right-click, we started seeing this more formally just the other day. When you right-click, it brings up your context menu for that selection type, in this case, edges. And you will see that there is a feature called New Face from Edges. New Face from Edges. That will fill that in as a big n-gon. And you see how that kind of pinches and pulls the shape in weird there a little bit? See how the shading looks weird there? That's one of the reasons why we don't like n-gons. They're unpredictable polygons. They create unpredictable shapes. So we really want to stay with quads. Remember, quads are four-sided polygons. So in this case, since I have a bunch, you could bridge and merge, but there's also in the face menu itself, which is only useful for this kind of stuff. So basically, if you deleted those and you just need to rebuild them, there is in the face menu something called grid fill. Grid fill. What that'll do is that'll fill that in with all quads. So you have your right click, right, particularly when we're have some edges there selected, right? There's new face from edges, and that's best if it's just a quad. You want to fill in a single quad that's missing. But if you deleted multiple quads, you might want to use face grid fill. All right. So I figured that'd be good to see that if you ever need to build a polygon, right, you can do new face from edges, particularly if it's like 1 or 2 polygons. If it's kind of more like 4 or 6, you might want to use grid fill, right? That's only in the face menu, though, so sometimes you won't see a feature in the right click. You'll only see it in the face menu, grid fill. Like I said, you might not need those yet. You probably won't. But in case you do, you now know that there are a couple of fill tools. Face grid fill, but also just right-click new face from edges. When you have an edge selected, you'll see new face from edges. Kind of cool, right? That's more for your general knowledge. Now, I'm going to hit 3 for face mode, right? So remember, 1 is vertex, 2 is edge, 3 is face. They are right here as buttons, though. Now, in this case, if I wanted to, I'm going to go Q for my selection tool. Let's say I wanted to kind of make a bit of kind of strips here. Like I want to maybe give this guy maybe a smidge of armor. Maybe he's a warrior crab, right? He's a battle crab. Maybe I wanted to give this guy a little bit of armor here. Now, we've already done a shell, and this is seamlessly connected because of our extrude along normal direction. However, armor is often going to be a truly separate object, right? So what we can do for this, and we've already kind of talked about the duplicate tool a couple times, right? Some of you guys have accidentally done it. Control D, right? Remember, that's in the mesh menu. Duplicate, Control D. Not Control E, Control D for duplicate or dog or whatever. Control D, and you notice that I can move those out, of course, if I want to, but when I left-click, there's now separate polygons there. And that's where things like your select linked can be useful, right, to select those again. So that's select linked. The default cookie for select linked is right bracket. I've switched to spacebar because I like that. Now, there is a tool that will solidify these. However, believe it or not, I have found there's actually an even better way to do that. This will actually be new for my older students, right? Believe it or not, extrude along normal direction does this. So if I right-click in face selection mode, I got those faces selected. We just saw this tool yesterday. Extrude faces along normals. I click on that, and I drag, and you see how we get a proper thicken here? But you don't have to worry about cleaning up the center. So I've been using Solidify for the last year, and then realized Extrude along normals does it also, which other packages actually, it does work that way. I just never thought to try that for there because there was a specific tool, Solidify, for it. But I found that this actually works better. And now you can see we've got thickened, kind of separate gear. Now, I'm going to show you 2 more things. And at this point, if you're, more than anything, if you're not making any simple gear for this guy yet, that's okay, right? I'm not going to worry about that for tomorrow's progress check, right? But I just want to move some of our lecture forward for some of our students that are, already in a pretty good spot. You guys could still keep working on the other stuff, right? Progress checks are much more about you guys showing me you're making progress, and then I can give you feedback on. But I do want to show you guys 2 more tools before we're done, right? And this is the kind of thing you're going to do later on your model. And I'll overview this lecture again. So I'll overview these things again. I just need more stuff to overview, right? There is a tool in Blender, and this will work for border edges also. So kind of when I deleted those quads and I selected that edge loop that was here for the hole, that's a border edge, right? There's only one face connected to that edge. You could bridge edges as well. But in this case, you should bridge same number to same number. So in this case, I'm going to select 1 polygon here and 1 polygon here. And if I right-click, right-click brings up Face Context menu. There is a tool called Bridge Faces. Bridge Faces. And you'll notice what it does is it creates new geometry connected up, like a bridge. So bridge is pretty accurately named. If I want, I can go put a loop cut in here just to kind of maybe tighten that up a little bit. Maybe even a loop cut through that direction to tighten that up a little bit. And now we've got a little bit of gear here. Now, of course, if I select the face, I can go to Select Linked. That selects just the connected ones. And then what I could do is I could right-click again, because that brings up Face Context menu. And way down towards the bottom is something called Separate. And you see we can separate by selection, because we've got just the armor selected. What that does is that actually makes this, if I go to 4 for object mode, its own object. You now see there's a second object in here. So that is what I wanted to show you guys that was new today. Now this gear and armor, if you're not there yet, don't even worry about it, right? Really focus on getting legs, antenna, kind of all that stuff. But I wanted to start to push forward to show you a little more for those that are ready for it. Hey, you've got a video, you've got some lecture on it. I'm going to be doing a lot of overview over, particularly next week, on all of this stuff, right? So I just figured it'd be great to kind of take that a little further today, get you guys a video with some new tools and features.